This is the new Range Rover Velar, and in this review we're going to explain why this luxury SUV might actually be good value. Now, the Velar first went on sale back in 2017, and 3 years after that it had some updates, and it has just had a few tweaks on top of that as well. On the outside you might be able to spot some new LED lights, you've got a new grille design, the rear bumper's different as well, but really on the outside the changes are pretty minimal. A much bigger change is the introduction of a bigger battery in the plug-in hybrid version of this car. So it's now up from 17.1 kilowatt hours to 19.2 kilowatt hours. And that means the official range of this new plug-in hybrid Velar is up to 40 miles, whereas it was 33 before. It can also now accept a CCS fast charge at up to 50 kilowatts. So from a regular home wall box, if you want to top up from flat to full, it'll take 2 hours and 30 minutes. But if you find a fast charger, then a 50 kilowatt charge will get you up to 80% in 30 minutes. And that is something that not many plug-in hybrids can manage. But perhaps the biggest change is inside here, where you can see the interior has had a pretty substantial makeover compared to the old car. So previously you had 2 screens on the dashboard and center console, but now you can see it's just this one 11.4 inch screen in the center of the dashboard here. Unfortunately, this is not a step forwards or an improvement for the car. And the reason for that is, in the old Velar, you had a separate screen down here dedicated to things like your climate control, and you had physical dials to adjust the fan speed and the temperature as well. But now all of that's gone, and it's instead been thrown onto this one touchscreen at the top. And the result is that doing simple things like changing the temperature is more complicated now while you're driving than it was before, which is a real shame. So yes, a lot of the icons are always visible if you want to change them, but you've still got to tap it, then go into another menu to do very, very simple things. So that is a shame. But the touchscreen infotainment system itself is reasonably good. It has got a bit of a clunky interface, but the graphics are reasonably sharp, and you get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. Something else that remains from the previous version of this car are these buttons on the steering wheel here. They just don't feel or look particularly nice. They're on this cheap, flimsy looking piece of plastic, and it just wobbles around if you use a button. It doesn't feel particularly luxurious. But there are lots of good things about this interior, of course, particularly the driving position. Now, you aren't very, very high up as you would be in a full-size Range Rover, but you still have a lofty driving position that gives you a really good view out of the car, and it's also very comfortable. It's very easy to set up your driving position. You get 14-way electrically adjustable seats as standard, including some fine tuning for your lumbar support, and even after hours behind the wheel of this car, it is still very comfortable. If you want a bit more luxury, you can go for a dynamic HSE model, which gets 20-way electrically adjustable seats, or you can get an autobiography Velar, which then gets you massaging seats. But you don't have to go for a range-topping model to get an interior that looks pretty luxurious. The materials offer a nice mix of plush-feeling surfaces here and there, but it's not amazing throughout because there are some cheaper-feeling bits, particularly down by the glove box here. And the quality, the fit and finish overall, while it's good, it's not quite as solid as a BMW X6. But this is still, overall, a very nice interior. In the rear seats of the Velar, there is a lot of space for adults. You've got very good legroom, you've got space for your feet under the seat in front of you. Headroom, even with the sunroof, is also pretty good. It's not perfect back here though, because cars like an Audi Q8 do offer even more room than what you get in the back of the Velar. And also these windows are a bit shallow, so you don't get loads of light in through them. And if you're sat in this middle seat, then the seat itself is quite small, and you've got this massive lump in the floor back here that you've got to put your feet either side of. But still, there isn't much to complain about back here, and overall, it is very good in the back. The Velar is a big car, and it's got a massive boot. In total, we could fit 10 carry-on size suitcases into the back here. That compares with 8 in the back of an Audi Q8. But if you go for a plug-in hybrid model like this one, then you lose a bit of the load capacity in the boot. In total, it's about 2 suitcases worth, or 50 litres. You can see that the space you do have in the back is very big, very wide, very simple boxy shape. There is no loading lip at the front, which is handy. There isn't though much in the way of underfloor storage at all. You can, if you want, increase the space available to you by dropping the rear seats, and if you want to do that, then you can try and reach them and throw them down from the back, or you can go round to the side door and chuck them down like that. Or if you pay extra, then you can get some levers from the back of the boot to drop them more easily from here. But it's a bit cheeky that on an expensive car like this, you don't get those as standard. Anyway, once you drop the seats down, you can see that there's actually quite a step up from the seat to the boot floor. Normally, it's the other way around, which is quite unusual. And it is a shame that there isn't anywhere to store the parcel shelf once you take it out. But overall, this clearly is still a very practical car. So, it's got a big boot, but let's be honest, this isn't some load-lugging workhorse that you're going to chuck all your furniture in and go to the tip with. This is a luxury SUV with lots of different trim levels. You can spend more than £80,000 on this car, but we actually think that the pick of the trim lineup is entry-level S trim. It's the cheapest option, and it still comes with lots of equipment like adaptive cruise control, keyless entry, dual zone climate control, and we don't necessarily think the jump up in price to those higher trim levels is worth it. Having said that, you will probably still want to add some options. For example, you get white solid paint as standard, but you can get a metallic paint finish or a premium metallic paint. And if you go for the regular colours, it's £760. For one of the fancier ones, it's £1,480. You get 19-inch alloys as standard, but you can pay extra to get up to 22-inch alloys. These are 21s. The jump from 19 to 20 is £840, and if you want bigger than that, then you have to spend quite a bit of money on some of the optional packs that are available. And remember, the smaller the alloy, the more comfortable the ride. Those packs, by the way, are all pretty expensive, and instead it makes more sense to pick and choose some individual options, like a 360-degree camera, because this is a pretty big car and it makes it easier to park. You can also get heated and cooled front seats for a reasonable amount extra, and it's also not much more money to get this upgraded Meridian sound system. And that is all on top of the optional boot release levers that we mentioned earlier. There is actually one pack that might be worth considering. The dynamic handling pack gives you air suspension in the Velar, and with it you have the cushiest ride available with this car, and it's really, really nice and plush. But to be honest, it's not a necessity, because even without it as standard, this rides very nicely indeed. It isn't perfect though, because it can thud over big imperfections in the road, and if you're travelling over rough surfaces, then it can feel a bit fidgety as well. But still, for a luxury SUV, the ride is impressive. So we told you about the trims and the options, but what about the engines? Well, there's a choice of diesels, petrol, there's a plug-in hybrid as well, but we think, like the trims, the cheapest option is actually the best. The D200 is a 4-cylinder diesel engine which is punchy, reasonably refined, it's frugal as well, and we think it makes the most sense. This is the P400e, the plug-in hybrid version of the Velar, and as we said, it gets a bigger battery than before, but the official range is still only 40 miles, and in the real world you can expect more like the mid-20 miles before the battery runs flat. And compared to a BMW X5 plug-in hybrid, that's got a much bigger battery, and it will be able to travel almost twice as far from a full charge. So it's not particularly impressive in that respect, but this is quick. However, if you want a really sharp and dynamic luxury SUV, then this isn't the option to go for, no matter which engine you put in your Velar, because there's a lot of body lean through corners, the steering is quite vague. So it's not particularly impressive in that respect. But what this is very good at is the luxury side of things. So as we said, the ride isn't perfect, but for the most part it is comfortable, and it's very quiet in here as well. The control weights are also very well weighted and predictable. It's very easy to drive this smoothly. So if you've got lots and lots of miles to do, this is a good car to do them in. And the cost for all this? Well, as we've mentioned, you can spend a lot of money on a Range Rover Velar, but at the entry point of the lineup, with the D200 engine in entry-level S trim, this actually looks pretty competitively priced. Now, in terms of the rivals that you might be putting this up against, it's kind of tricky to pin down, because you might see this as an Audi Q5 rival or a BMW X4, and in that case, then this is priced above those alternatives. But really, in terms of size and in terms of luxury, this is a more natural rival to things like the Audi Q8 and the BMW X6, and this is cheaper than those cars. That is in part down to the fact that rivals like those other SUVs only offer big, powerful 6-cylinder engines. They don't have cheaper alternatives with less power like this D200. But still, that does all mean that at the entry point of the lineup, this, compared to equivalent rivals, looks pretty decent value. But we can't do a Range Rover review without talking about reliability, because the brand has a famously disastrous reputation in that department. And in our latest reliability survey, the Velar was placed 22nd out of 24 cars in the large SUV class. The standard warranty is 3 years with no mileage limit, and if you're going to keep the car for longer than that, then you might be wise to consider extending it. Still, reliability aside, the Range Rover Velar overall is a decent SUV. It's comfortable, quiet, practical, luxurious, and at the cheaper end of its lineup, surprisingly good value. Thanks very much for watching this review. Click on that link to see another one, and make sure you subscribe to our channel. And to save more than £3,000 on a Velar right now, click on that link to go to whatcar.com.